Freshworks 18. I am with Sanjeev from Freshworks. Welcome. At
Thank you,
last
Buckley.
we get to speak.
Yeah, I know we've been trying to do this for a while.
Great to speak to you.
Thanks, Buckley.
Just sort of bring us up to date on the sort of things that you're working on at the moment, because your role is quite, because you always pop up all over the place on social media and blogs, and you always come up with some really cool stuff. What are you working on at the moment? What's your current?
So I started as a service desk analyst. So I've been on the other side, and then I moved over to Fresh Service, where I started working as a product consultant. So I get to help customers implement Fresh Service. So I think one thing that really struck me is how less importance goes to self-service and user experience, and we kind of do self-service as like just like one thing off the checklist, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. I really want to solve that. So right now I'm just working on those things. For example, like the talk today was on a concept called selfless-service, which I think is something that's beyond self-service, because self-service kind of, you have to interrupt someone and get them to do self-service, whereas selfless-service is a mindset shift that integrates self-service into a user's daily life.
So what is selfless service? What does that mean then?
For me, self-service is a mindset change, like I said, where you put your users' needs above your own. For example, you don't do self-service because you have to do self-service.
Yeah.
You do self-service because you want your users to find a quicker solution to their problems. So for me, the reason I gave it a name is because it's easier for people to remember. And I've been doing this topic. This is like second time I'm giving this talk, and I've blogged about it, and I've talked about it on Twitter and social media. So I'm hoping this will get picked up and people start looking at self-service in a slightly different way.
Do you think that it helps them? Because self-service, we'll just call it that for a second, is like any other use of technology. People can get it really right, or they can really mess it up. They can have too many options, or too much of the screen, or not think about it. What does this concept actually help them to do it better because they're thinking about the right thing?
Yeah, and definitely I think mindset change is a start, and you obviously have to go into the practical aspects of things, like how to exactly do it, right? So I think that is also important. That's something I try to cover in my presentation. For example, I actually tell them how to design a ticket form, like what are the best practices that you can do. You can't just leave it like at impact and urgency. You have to tell people what it really means, because you and I really know what it means. Like, we know priority matrix, we know ITIL, so we know exactly what that means, but we can't say the same thing about our users.
Yeah.
So you have to help them out, you have to give them some indication, you have to walk them through the process so they actually get it and they do the right thing.
And that means effectively re-engineering, I suppose, the way that you do classification. You simplify it, you take away the jargon.
Yes, I think that's a really important thing. And you would think it's really simple, right? Like, you think that, okay, if I'm using a word, I want my intended audience to know it. But it always doesn't work out like that, because what's obvious to us, it's not obvious to everyone. And I think what we have is the curse of knowledge, because we are into IT and we can really understand and get things. But the more you talk to people, you'll be surprised. They actually don't get it as much as we think they will.
Why would they care what the difference is between an incident and a
Exactly,
problem? All that sort of stuff.
And if you're going to tell them an incident, it means something else in their world. Yeah, so I think that's really important.
So, what's the advice in terms of if you're helping an organization to develop this? What sort of things do they need to do to actually make it work practically?
I think what I have right now is a couple of things. For example, let's say make your knowledge base more visual. Instead of having text, have GIFs, screenshots, and videos. And let's say when you're sending out an email, construct the email in a way that's readable to them. For example, make sure you tell them why let's say if you want to upgrade them to a new patch or something, you want them to do something, explain why, and then let them do. These are something simple that I have in mind, but I am actually working on a framework, if we can call it that, called the Readily Approach to Self-Service Implementation. So it's basically divided into 4 phases. You have the research phase, you have the design phase, and then you have the launch phase, and then you have the iterate. So that's something I'm working on right now. I'm hoping to launch it as probably a blog, and then I want to maybe talk about it a little bit more and have some content.
And so does the research phase include, I suppose, customer engagement, user engagement, to see if it's working and it's right?
Even before that, so you need to know why you're doing self-service. Maybe, let's say, in your current environment, people use, let's say, Skype for Business more than they use self-service portal. So then you start thinking, is there a way I can get self-service into Skype? Is there a way I can do a integration with my ITSM software? Can I get a chatbot in there? Because if you do your research phase right, you know exactly where your users are, and you can get self-service to them instead of forcing them onto a portal which they have no idea about, they don't care about. And so I think the research phase is also, let's say, you get a couple of user group in, with a couple of people who are interested, you kind of validate your idea with them, and you go back to them and you design the portal, say that, this is what we have, does it make sense to you? So I think that's the it's kind of like a basement, and I think it's a really important phase that we don't concentrate on at all right now. For us right now, we focus a lot more on the other side, like setting up the configurations, getting the assets in, getting the SLAs in. But this side, we do it, but then we do it as an afterthought, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. I mean, I suppose from the point of view of just finally on how all this might work and what you need to do going forward. I mean, are there any particular tips for people to be looking at, how they might progress their self-service, or just, is it about your approach? What other general things can people do to develop their
self-service to make it more effective?
Yeah. Or even just think. I mean, there is that point around about how you decide when you need self-service. What is the trigger for that?
No, I think you have to start by understanding your incident trends, right? You have to ticket trends, rather.
Yeah.
So you have to look at what are the things that people are asking for the most. For example, let's say if it's a database access, and you have, let's say, 60% of tickets around that, then that insight can then power your self-service approach. So then what you can think about is, okay, can I integrate my self-service portal with the database administration and then automate this entire thing? So I think it totally depends on what are the things that people are asking for, and then that should be your driving factor. That should be the trigger to design a self-service portal, and that should kind of drive it. So that's the way that I'm thinking about it. And I'm pretty new, right? I've been in the industry for about 4 to 5 years. But I think this way of thinking is really important. And the way that you put your users' needs above your own, because what we do is ultimately for them. And if they're not benefiting from that, then I don't see a point in doing what we do.
Couldn't put it better myself. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Sanjeev.
Thanks, Mark. Great to chat with you.